Hello, everyone, and welcome, Peter. Your first time on center stage at the Phocuswright conference.
Very exciting. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, let's just get started. So it's been about 6 months since you took over as the CEO, but of course you have an association with the Expedia group going back a little while now. And you're definitely familiar with the company. So tell me, in the 6 months that you've taken on the CEO role, what has taken you by surprise? What was something that you didn't expect?
Well, I think obviously I stepped in the middle of the pandemic, and so kind of everything was a surprise in a sense, and we were having to do a lot of things we'd never done before. Having to deal with tons and tons of consumer issues to help the customers get safely home and deal with their cancellations. We were doing a lot to try to deal with the supply side of the market and homeowners on the Vrbo side. So there was just tons of things going on. I think, I don't know if that much took me by surprise. It was just a conflation of all kinds of issues that, you couldn't predict it all happening at once. I would say, the team and the company kind of bonded together and took on the task and did an amazing job in a very tough time. And that's not a surprise, but you have to respond to a crisis, and I think we did a great job of that. But there weren't any real surprises. I think, well, I guess for the first 6 months I didn't have to wear any pants to work because it was summer and I could wear shorts and be on Zoom all the time. But other than that, it was pretty much what one should have expected, I think.
And Expedia started, making some changes even before the pandemic struck.
Yeah.
What was the effect of the crisis? What has it allowed you to really accelerate in terms of some strategic changes, and what have you pressed maybe pause on?
Yeah, I would say the pandemic has given us, as you say, we started before the pandemic, but it's given us the courage and the moment to really go after some fundamental structural issues that we've wanted to attack for a long time. But we all run these companies. Their expectations for profits and performance and everything else. And I think we in the big OTA world, we live in a very tactical, transactional world. And so if you turn your attention away from it for even a moment, you lose a transaction, you lose something. But the virus has given us the room, and we've really leaned into it to take a step back, rebuild our core foundation technically and on the product side. And you don't get those chances very often, and you don't get those chances when it's the analogy of trying to change the tires on a car going 100 miles an hour. When it's going 50 miles an hour or 20 miles an hour, it's a lot easier to change the tires. So it makes it easier to make those short-term sacrifices for the long-term good. And I think that's going to pay huge rewards for our customers, for our suppliers, and certainly for our company and our people. So I think that's been a real blessing out of a terrible thing, obviously, for humanity, but it's given us a chance to do that important work.
And one of those important things, I think, has been, it's a big shift, and you've talked about it a little bit in other forums. It's about kind of moving away from really letting the different brands compete to perhaps having a more portfolio kind of view, if I can call it that. And part of that, a big part of that is your performance marketing team and combining that. What does that really mean in practical terms?
Yeah, well, in practical terms, I think, we ran a strategy, as you say, where the brands would compete. It created innovation in many ways. It was some healthy competition. That was the philosophy. But I think it kind of, we ran it as far as we could, if you will, and we needed to find a way to optimize for multi-brand. Multi-brand is a great advantage, potentially, used correctly, but used incorrectly, it can create the way the Google auctions work, the way the Meta auctions work, it can create more friction for you. And even in brand marketing, it can create confusion. And we've had many markets with many brands all over the world, and never a really concise strategy for how we optimize for all of those brands. And in some cases, that may mean having fewer brands in a market. In some cases, it may mean having a hero brand and brands that follow. We are doing that work across, every market, every brand, everything. And I think, we believe that that's going to really drive a lot of incremental benefit for us, clearer brand propositions for the consumers, and on the performance side, a real opportunity to optimize for the collection of brands. And we're also, as I said, we're doing this kind of underpinning work on our technology that's going to allow us to have a much more unified approach with the same data across all the brands applied through the algorithms and put the best use. So I think there's, I believe a lot of upside for us in doing that work right and doing it in a concerted effort across multi-brand.
And of course, that also means that you save on some costs, right? Especially kind of given the statements that you've made and Barry Diller has made on reducing spend with Google. But I wonder, does that also then give your competitors an advantage because the auctions aren't as competitive? Is there kind of a win-win for everybody?
I don't know that that's the case. I mean, again, I think we might have been costing ourselves money more than we were costing the competition money. Again, it's a very geo-specific answer. Different auctions run differently in different places of the world, not because Google changes them, but because of the number of competitors and what share of market people have. So it's a complicated question. I think in general, it's not impossible. It could help generally, take a little heat out of the auction, and that could help everybody. But we should be the greatest beneficiary by far.
Okay. Talking about Google, you've said, you'd like a level playing field or a fair playing field. What does that look like to you? Is it okay for them to build their own travel products as long as they're not listing them higher or giving themselves an advantage in terms of placement in search?
Look, I think, any company is entitled to build whatever they want. I think if you're the central marketplace and you begin to advantage your own products in a way that blocks out people who made your marketplace and makes it an unfair way for some of us to reach the end customer, I think that's where we've certainly said consistently that we think the power has been misused. I don't think we could. I don't want to get into the argument about whether they should or shouldn't be able to build travel products. I don't actually think they want to be in the travel business. They just like to disintermediate and create more value for themselves. And they certainly don't want to take customer calls or make sure someone got on their cruise or deal. Like they don't want to do that. They just want to be, a super efficient, market dominant marketplace. And we just want a fair fight in that marketplace. And we're happy to fight all the players. But when someone's got their foot on the scale and changing the dimensions of the auction in their favor, we don't think that's quite equitable.
So you'll be watching the antitrust action very closely, of course.
We will. With everything else, I assume. But yes.
Yes, absolutely. Turning to Vrbo, and of course, just alternative accommodation, short-term rentals. That's been the one bright spot, I think, for the industry during this crisis. And you've been, in your results, you talked about that. I want to ask you, just in one sentence, can you summarize your thoughts on the rebranding from HomeAway to Vrbo?
Yeah, I think, I don't know if I can do it in one sentence. I can't do much in one sentence, but we believed that the Vrbo brand, based on research, based on history, actually had an easier way to cut through as a brand in many of our strongest markets, and we made a decision a few years ago that that was the direction we would go in. I think we probably maybe a little bit underinvested in it and under pushed it. You know, we had a tricky year a couple of years ago. Obviously, some changes ensued, but I think you know, Vrbo, like many others, was a beneficiary of this moment. It had a use case that was extremely attractive. It's been an absolutely banner year for us for Vrbo. Wouldn't wish the pandemic on us to get there, but it has been a beneficiary of it. And I think it is a unique moment now for us to re-drive the brand. And we've moved much more quickly to do the brand changes in a number of geographies, and we're going to push into it in as many places as we can. So.
And you've done really well, obviously, with Vrbo, but you know, part of that I think has also been kind of the inventory and you know, the locations, if I can put it that way. As travel starts to come back, and again, I know you've said you believe that cities and urban destinations will come back. Our research, actually, we did some research recently, and that showed that travelers are, you know, happy to return to urban centers in a few months. So how do you see yourselves kind of effectively competing with Airbnb's pretty large urban market inventory, especially given all the talk about how hard it is to get new inventory and, you know, listings across multiple platforms, et cetera?
Yeah, look, there's no question Airbnb has a great position in the market, and we certainly hope to be able to compete in portions of those markets where we think we can play and be effective and have great inventory. I think we've leaned into our whole home solution. We've leaned into the benefits that that's at, and frankly, I think that's been an even better, you know, more concentrated solution for this use case in the moment. However, you know, the whole home solution won't be millions and millions of in-city opportunities, and so I think we'll figure out how to play. We want to lean into segments where we think we can win. We think we've actually gained share in the U.S. during this period because of the use case, and you know, we don't have to be the same as them. We just have to win in our segment, and we believe we can differentiate ourselves, drive the brand, and have a better experience for families, for extended families, for complicated use cases. You know, we likely will never win and never try to win on the single person traveling to a city. That use case. Okay. I think we will win on the hotel use case, but not at that.
Okay. Now, you also said recently, and I quote, this was at the GeekWire Summit, "The day there's a vaccine announced that people really believe in will be our highest booking day in history." Now, at least from the reports I've seen, that hasn't happened, and there could be multiple reasons for it. But, you know, what do you see in terms of recovery? There are multiple vaccines that recently seem to have borne good results.
No, well, I think the vaccine news has been tremendously good and perhaps proven me wrong in the sense that it's more than just announcing that there's an effective vaccine. People have to believe it's going to be distributed, when it's going to be distributed, how they'll get it. I think there's no doubt in any of our minds, and I'm sure everybody watching this, the moment they heard that, started thinking about next summer or next spring and where can I go, and oh, maybe I'll be able to have my summer vacation in Europe or America or wherever, you know, Asia, wherever you were headed. So I think that consideration is definitely happening. I think because there's uncertainty about timing and other things, and because we are right in the teeth of this third wave, which is devastating in many parts of the world, I think there's a lot of conflicting information. You know, if you turn on the morning news, you know, the Today Show or something in the U.S., you'll get the massive COVID cases and the vaccine news, and they're right next to each other. And you know, I don't know how the average consumer parses that and says, okay, so can I travel? Should I not travel? What do I do? So I think, you know, again, I think my sentiment is right, that when people have the confidence that they know when they're going to be safe to travel, they will start booking. I think there's still some uncertainty, and to the extent there are a lot of bookings going on right now, they're all to do with that sentiment and to a large extent, or the very short use case of I'm trying to go somewhere for the holidays in the U.S. or something. Other than that, we've clearly seen a tough environment in the world travel market in the short term.
Okay, I'm going to switch topics just a little bit. You wrote a really personal, very heartfelt letter to Expedia employees after the George Floyd killing, and you committed to kind of pushing the company to do better. Now, we heard yesterday from Martinique Lewis of the Black Travel Alliance. She's a diversity and inclusion consultant who's created a report card on how the travel industry does on diversity. And, unsurprisingly, I should say, we didn't do too well as an industry.
Yep.
So how do you think we can improve? What's Expedia doing? And I know you guys have a great team that's focused on diversity and inclusion.
Yeah, so we've taken a very practical approach. We didn't hire a lot of outside consultants, not that they're not valuable in the right circumstance, but we found, I found a leader that I believed in to run the group. We are adding resource, and we have taken a very practical, business-like approach to this is a business problem that we have to solve for ourselves and help solve for the industry. And that involves a bunch of work on training, on bias training. It involves a lot of work on sourcing and hiring talent. We have just this week held our own internal town hall on I&D to announce our targets for diversity, which I think our people are extremely excited about, certainly our board and all our senior management support. And they're ambitious and they're going to be challenging. But we have laid out a path where we think with the right sourcing of talent, the right hiring techniques, the right interviewing techniques, and et cetera, that we can drive a real change in our organization. But it is a very business-like approach. We are not, we're not going to conferences to talk about it. We're not bragging about, the way we think. We're getting after the work.
That's
we have great intent to really drive it.
That's great. Well, thank you very much, Peter. We have to leave it there. Lots of stuff we could talk about still, but I appreciate your joining us. Thank you.
Thank you for the time.